Welcome back to Junction 119. This is Kellen.
This is Casen.
And here we are on a Wednesday. We're coming to you a day earlier. Consider yourself very, very lucky, listeners, because we weren't going to do a show this week. Up until probably, I don't know what, 20 hours ago, we weren't going to do a
Yeah,
show
last
this
night.
week at all. It was literally last night. It was like, hey, I've actually got some time and I have things going on our normal recording day this week as well. So here we are. How are you doing, my friend?
Good, good. Yeah. Like you said, I think we both got work stuff going on. We typically record on Wednesdays, and my plans changed, so I am available tonight on Tuesday. So here we are. Here we are. We're gonna talk
Yeah,
about some football.
we're recording. We're recording this on a Tuesday. You will hear this by Wednesday. After the weekend that was, I was actually really like mad that we weren't going to have a show this week.
I was too, because we were texting about it, and then we were like, you know what, screw it, let's just do it. Like we got to talk about Travis Kelce, we got to talk about Deion, we got to talk about all this stuff.
I was literally just going to say, listen, hey, we are going to talk about NFL, we are going to talk about college football, we're going to give you our of the weeks, and then we're going to get into a little, like literally our closing conversation will be a little bit of pop culture, but it's all mainly sports this week. Mainly football, and my goodness, you already said the name. I was literally going to say, hey, do we want to jump into the game first? That's the addressing the elephant in the room, or literally more to the point, the 12-time Grammy winner in the players box. I mean, it's like, that I kind of was like, look, do we want to start with that game, or do we want to start with something else? Because at core, this is a sports show. I mean, it is, but that is like the mech. Our show is like where those two things combined. And I just feel like just the insanity that has taken place since Sunday to now, even Tuesday evening, with that. So we're gonna go through some games, like how we've been doing the last few weeks, talk about kind of our takeaways from the week, some stuff that just kind of blew our minds. Kason, I'll let you dictate where we actually start. You can take it any direction you want.
I think we'll ease into the waters. I let's just start with the Browns to get it out of the way here.
That's fair.
I Browns look good. They looked better. I mean, the defense is incredible. I mean, after 3 games, I think that the statistics are saying this is the best statistical defense basically since the 70s and since the 85 Bears. Um I mean, I take that what you will. I mean, it's 3 games into the season, and I'm sure they'll decline a little bit. But on the face of it, I mean, who knew if you add a little bit of talent around Myles Garrett, the defense is good. Who knew?
Who knew?
Only took him 7 years. But yeah, I mean, I'd say at this point, I mean, it'd be hard to deny that Jim Schwartz is probably in the running for the best assistant in the league. I would imagine he's gone. He's going to get a head coaching job if he wants one next year. I would imagine. And
could see that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was good to see Deshaun not look terrible. I mean, we were talking about it too. It's just like it's hard for me to like really celebrate him. I mean, like we talked about it at length. We don't need to go down the roads of the complexities of that situation. But yeah, I mean, it's just I guess I'll just have to focus on the defense and the other people, and the other, I guess, 10 people on offense, or 9 if you're Marcus Freeman in Notre Dame. But we'll get into that later. But so it's just I mean, it's a very complex situation. I mean, you can understand with the Ben Roethlisberger stuff for years. It's just it's
not
difficult
to go down that
separate.
To kind of stay professional as our cast. It is really tough to hit a situation where you're a fan of the team and not necessarily players. I mean, and I think anyone who's a sports fan has had that experience at one point or another. It's been well documented that I was not the biggest fan of Ben's off the field stuff whenever he was a Pittsburgh Steeler. I think if you guys keep winning, the Browns fans are going to slowly start to feel that same way as well. So it's just the reality of the situation, whether it's allegations, because it is all allegations. It's just one of those things where it's like you have to separate how you feel for the player if he represents your organization that you're a fan of. It's bad that it has to be that way, but either way, you still have plenty to be excited about. That doesn't involve that at all. So
Yeah, no, I mean,
yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Amari Cooper. I still do not understand how we basically picked him up at Goodwill from the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, he's definitely, I think, a little overpaid, but it's like, okay, I mean, for what we did to get him, it was, worth it, I think.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just, I don't know if you watched this game at all or if you saw any of it.
Wasn't
It,
able
it was
to.
just it was very funny, because Kevin Stefanski is like addicted to wide receiver jet sweeps.
Yeah.
He's obsessed with it. And so he has Elijah Moore, um like he has him like being like a Debo type of like semi wide receiver running back type of guy. And he ran it, I don't know, probably 6 times, and I think the net total gain was like 3 yards. Like, it's just like, dude, like, it's not gonna work. Like,
really
it's never gonna work.
Dual threat guys hard. Okay,
it's never going to work.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
I it's just every time you did it, like you saw more in motion, and you were like, he's gonna do it again, and it was just like he got like an inch. It's like, what are we doing?
I think a real test is coming up for the Browns at home. I mean, right now 3 teams in the AFC North sit at 2-1, and the one that so far 3 weeks in is on paper the best team in the AFC North is 1-2. I think Cleveland has a lot to show this next week. Cleveland is also 3 weeks into the season undefeated at home. Noteworthy.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely frustrating, because it's like, if you look back at the game we had last week against each other, like, the Browns absolutely should have won that game. I mean, like, aside from the offensive turnovers, and like, they had 2 touchdowns that they gave them,
and that's exactly why they didn't win that game.
Right? Exactly.
So they shouldn't have won that game, and they didn't.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I don't know what you're saying, because we won the game. Continue.
But so it's just that's a game that you look back and you're like, oh, we definitely should have won that.
Like, oh, it was winnable, but we lost it.
It was winnable, right? It was winnable, and we had it if we wanted it, but we gave it away.
Yeah, let me go ahead and put those words in your mouth.
and so it's just, and so all these divisional games so early, they're very crucial. I mean, we already got one against the Bengals, which is going to be very, very beneficial later down the road, I'm sure.
I mean, as our friend of the show said when we did our preview, as Dylan said, I mean, this division is, I think, wide open. I don't think that's even deniable 3 weeks in. I think the cream will rise, as it tends to. I just have no idea who the best teams are in it right now.
Well, I mean, we just saw the Ravens lose to Gardner Minshew's Colts. Like,
exactly.
What is going on? Like,
right. I mean, at least the one Steelers lost is a team that they absolutely should have lost to, and they just happened to get destroyed by the Niners.
Yeah,
makes sense. The other 2 wins are grinded out wins, which I can go ahead and talk about the Steelers real quick, just kind of get our fandoms out of the way, before we go into the other games. Steelers beat the Raiders in Las Vegas 23-18. It was their first trip ever to the Death Star there on the Vegas Strip. A game that the Steelers, for the most part, dominated and did their absolute best to kind of give away towards the end. Every facet of the Steelers game did look better. However, the offense just was continuously very sluggish. I'm not going to go on for a 3rd week in a row about Matt Canada. It is what it is. But I just kind of wish that they would give Kenny a bit more leeway to make audibles in game, because apparently he is a very big part of the game play, the game prep, I should say, game plan prep. That being said, I really appreciated what I saw out of all facets of the game. Honestly, between Highsmith and obviously TJ Watt's playing like a Hall of Famer, I just think that the amount of wins that you can almost directly attribute right now to the very, distant future, Cam Hayward didn't play, and it was like the defense didn't skip a beat. I mean, it was just incredible to watch. And I got to talk about this too. The Raiders had it. There's a few penalties, ticky-tack, that kind of kept the Raiders in the game late. Josh McDaniels decides to go for a field goal, and then the Steelers got a leverage penalty. They stopped them again, and he decides to go for another field goal. the reason, listeners, that that's a bit of an issue is when you're in a situation where a touchdown will tie the game, you might as well go for it then, because the best you're going to be able to do most likely is be on your own 20-yard line with 15 seconds left. And that's exactly what the Raiders were left in. And the Steelers just picked it off and won the game. And so I don't know, really weird football decision-making there. A lot of Steelers fans were talking in various social media chatters like, this is what the Raiders feel about the Steelers offense. They think they're just going to take Max Crosby over the side and just another great pass rusher and be able to just stop the Steelers, which, to be fair, up to that point had been working most of the game. It didn't work out for them though, and the Steelers got the dub. So it was probably the best uniform matchup of the week. I mean, I know a lot of people will say whenever you see the Steelers and the Raiders on the same field together, it goes back to like the ancient hollows of the game, you know? So yeah, overall, Steelers look similar to better, I guess, is the best I can feel. I'm happy I'm happy we won. That's all I can say. Right now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know for sure where the Raiders stand with their confidence level in McDaniels, but
well, Jimmy G. I mean, Jimmy G looked like, for the most part, the same Jimmy G. He's still trying to get his chemistry down with Devontae Adams, which at times looked very good. I mean, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, he looks like the same guy he's been. Not the guy who's going to lead you to the promised land. So that's just how I feel about that. I don't know how good that win is in hindsight. They were two pretty even up teams. So yeah, sort of like the joke I made. It's like, well, get ready to see some bad offense and some maybe half decent defense this next Sunday night. And that's exactly what the game was. So, so that's our teams. The game I'd like to talk about next is just what took place in South Beach.
I was literally just going to bring that up. We need to discuss the homicide that happened at Hard Rock Stadium.
Give me a second, Casen. Give me 1 second. Oh, I think they just scored. I think the Dolphins just scored again, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Now 77.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they just scored again. Wow. That's crazy. I've never seen anything like this. How are they still scoring? The game's already, I'm kidding. But I'm going to say something that I haven't heard anyone really say in the last couple of days. As like eyeball opening as that is to see a 70 ball on an NFL scoreline, I will say that for the last 10 years, as the pro game's gotten less physical and more finesse with rule changes and things like that, this was going to happen eventually, right? I mean, like where someone puts up a college level of points. Yeah. It's just like, these are professional athletes. Like, how does Denver let that happen? I mean, to the point where up to and including Mike McDaniel could have gone for more points in that game. And they did it without Jalen Waddle. I mean, there's so many statistical things that are going to stand with that Dolphins performance for a long time.
That definitely gets kind of forgotten about is that Waddle didn't even play.
Insane.
But here's the thing that's kind of crazy is it's like for being 70, like it's not like Tua had otherworldly numbers. I mean, like he had 309, or he had 309 yards and 4 touchdowns, which like for it being 70 points isn't that bad. It's just they had 5 rushing touchdowns from a couple different running backs and then 350 yards rushing as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, it's just they had a lot of other contributors. I mean, it's not like they were trying. It's just like they were running it. It's just the Broncos weren't stopping it. Yeah. So it's like so people can get mad and they're like, oh, that's so classless, because that's a lot of people being all mad at their coaching staff's decision to like keep scoring. But it's like, wait, you can start to fall down. Like, I don't know what.
See, every time I hear something like that taking place, like that argument taking place, it's always in the college context. Like, I to some degree understand parents and other people coming at a head coach where your team is a bunch of college kids telling them, hey, you can call off the dogs or get some other guys time or whatever you want to do when you're up by 6 touchdowns late. but these are professional athletes. I don't think that should in any way apply to these guys. If you want us to stop scoring,
Right.
stop us. You get paid
No,
millions of dollars to do that. Like,
I mean,
unbelievable.
Tua didn't play. I think in the fourth. I think they pulled him after the third.
Yeah.
And so it's just, and like they were running it almost every down. So it's just like I don't know, like they definitely weren't actively trying. It's just
Mike White. I mean, well, I this is a thing to say. I heard it said that Mike White had a better QBR than Tua did. He did, but he also threw 2 passes.
Yeah, well, I mean, two.
So
yeah,
100, 2 out of 2.
Yeah,
I mean, 100 versus 88.87, which is still very good on the day. 23 for or 23 out of 26 for Tua.
Well, I mean, again, if you want to talk about like coaching decisions, I mean the Sean Payton leaving Russ in down 50.
Yeah, that's a bigger story.
Is I think wild. I mean, at a certain point, you want to keep trying to come back, but then once that's gone, it's just like,
okay, let me rephrase. It's not a bigger story than 70 being dropped on an NFL team. It is as big a story wrapped up into this game because it almost comes off as, I don't know if Sean Payton's trying to humiliate the guy or just expose him or get him to a place where he's playing bad enough to justify benching him. Like that almost comes to mind.
I saw some of the people talk about this, and I think it's both. It's that, and I think it sends a message that like Sean Payton doesn't care if he gets hurt. He's not my franchise quarterback. I'm not the one that traded for him. I don't want him here. True. I mean, to me this tells me, and I know for a fact Russ knows this too, that he got the message. It tells me that Sean does not care about Russ. He doesn't want him. He doesn't care about him. He doesn't like him. And I mean, that's a pretty bad situation going on in Denver.
It is. I even heard someone go as far as to say, this doesn't really have to do directly with Sean Payton, but it kind of does now. Russell Wilson was a surefire, probably first ballot Hall of Famer 2 years ago. And in a season and like a smidge, it's like in a fraction in 3 games, he is like looking like he is going to destroy his legacy every passing week in Denver. I mean, that's how bad things look, you know?
Well, I think definitely something that needs to be at least mentioned is it's like, it's definitely like weird that he gets sent out of town. Gino's in Seattle and he looks like Russ did 10 years ago. And it's like, okay, so is there some kind of like witch hex on Lumen Field that like any quarterback that plays there looks good, and the second they go somewhere else, they look like garbage?
I mean, I'll just put it this way. Pete Carroll's system, he was a system guy. Maybe Russell Wilson would have never worked out in the NFL because of his size and stuff, all the stuff that was said about him pre-draft that caused him to fall all those years ago. Maybe he fell in with the perfect system with Pete Carroll because maybe on a bigger scale, that is what it takes for some of these quarterbacks of his size and others, like even a Drew Brees, to reach their full potential is to be in like a perfect system for them.
I think there's definitely, I mean, we don't need to go into the huge conversation about
we can move on.
but like it definitely fit matters. And I think that the issue with Russ is that Russ sort of became too big, and I think he forgot that like he's not naturally that good. Like he forgot that he definitely was a system guy.
He never really saw himself as a system guy.
Right. I mean, it's definitely interesting that you see that like after they won the Super Bowls, or they went to the Super Bowl and they went to the Super Bowls, and he, got with Sierra and he blew up into this like marketing thing that he just fell off a cliff.
Team
and
3.
It's definitely like he's not as good as he was when he was like the underdog and unknown and like kind of more of a nuanced figure.
Yeah, I agree. Team 3 got around him, and it just we'll see where things go from here. But there's a game that I'll mention once we get to this other game that's going to come up this next week. That's I think going to determine a lot of where his team could be headed, depending on what happens. Let's see here. which game do you really want to go with? Because I feel like the one with the least amount of football stuff to talk about should be the last one we talk about, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I'll just briefly we'll go to Dem Boys laid a massive egg against the tanking Cardinals.
All right.
I don't know what's going on. The Cardinals forgot they're looking for Caleb Williams. The Cowboys forgot they're actually trying
to play
to
football. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't say they forgot how to. I said they forgot to play football. For this week. That was really weird. That is truly one of those any given Sunday situations, I think. But also at the same time, it's made funnier because it's the Cowboys, and how good they looked the first 2 weeks. And I don't know. There were more people dogging them than any other. And I don't have any. I mean, just they deserve it after that.
I mean,
Joshua Dobbs took you apart, man.
Josh Dobbs was 17 for 21, 189 yards passing, a touchdown, and he had 55 yards on 6 carries. Like
for reference, Dak was 25 for 40, had 1 TD and 1 pick and a QBR of 40.8.
Yeah. And so I don't know how you can be making Josh Dobbs look like Lamar out there. I mean, I don't. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Also, someone else I'll shout out is James Conner had a solid day. 14 carries, almost 100 yards rushing. I mean, it was a truly kind of team effort. It's just, I don't know. This is what the Cowboys do. I mean, if we're being real here, this is like they have these weeks where they just look inexplicably terrible, and many of them they just save for the playoffs, and then the season's over for them. But this right here, this past week was exactly why I kind of feel for Cowboys fans in that there's just inexplicable, what is going on? Like every season, it just seems like this, you have no idea which Cowboys team is going to show up. And it gets to the place where like by weeks, how many years in a row now, by like week 7, we have no idea what the Cowboys are. We have no clue. We have no idea if they're awful and playing above.
Well, we don't know if they're really what's weird is like that's what got Jason Garrett fired, and the same stuff with Mike McCarthy. So it's like, it's so weird that the same stuff is happening, and it makes no sense. I don't know if that's a Dak issue. I don't know if it's a Jerry issue. I don't know if it's just, the entire locker room, because they don't really have a ton of turnover as far as the roster goes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to be the culture, right? I mean, like just the whole locker room culture. And
I'm nodding my head because I think it is a culture thing. And I want to go as far as to say, I don't think any one person is responsible for what the Cowboys are right now. I mean, ultimately it does come back to their owner and CEO, who is, any success they have, seemingly it has to be because of him. You know what I mean? But from the top down, there are other organizations where that has been the case, and there's been a lot of success, you know what I mean, in the past, where it's like, look, if one person has to take the credit, that's whatever, but everyone else contributed, and the people within it know that, you know what I mean? The Cowboys, as one of those things, is like, I think they're under a lot of scrutiny. A lot of people love to see them lose. A lot of people really don't like them. A lot of people love them. Their own fans almost at times feel apologetic for rooting for them. I mean, I don't know. The Cowboy fans I know sometimes are pretty suffering fans, because it's like, if you're our age and a Cowboys fan, Casen, you've been a laughingstock really most of our lives. Yet you heard right before you were born how great the 90s were, because they were,
It's definitely the people who are like our age, who's like, parents grew up as Cowboys fans in the 90s. And then so it's like the people that our age are like, why am I a Cowboys fan?
Right. It's like, thanks for making me a Cowboys fan. You know what I mean? It's like, and I don't know. I do think it is mostly a culture thing with them. And it's a culture of almost, you're mostly mediocre, but your brand says you aren't. But
it's the biggest thing I can equate it to is like, it's the culture of like, of drinking your own Kool-Aid way too much. Like it's like the culture of, you got Skip on in the locker room every day talking about you. You've got Jerry just talking about how great you are every single day.
Right.
And then it's just kind of like, almost you walk into any game, almost
like this idea of, to bounce off your point, man, almost like this mentality of, I don't have to work that hard this week. We're 2-0 and we're the Dallas Cowboys. It's like, yeah, boys, in the house, I'm sure that means a lot. that doesn't mean a lot anywhere else in the league. It really means, oh, look at that giant blue star target on your back. I mean, yeah.
I mean, I almost like, I don't know. I mean, look, it's a 17 game season.
It is.
You are allowed letdown games.
You are.
Like that happens. Everybody has them. It's fine. It's just, it's a weird situation because I'm honestly more confused about the Cardinals because like you shouldn't be winning this game. Like, I don't like,
you can't tell the players to not play. I mean, come on. You can't, like, that's the whole thing with tanking. Yeah. Like, look, coaches and players don't tank because no one's getting retained on an 0-17 roster. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean,
I don't know either.
We'll see. I don't know.
I think we can move on because I want to transition by saying, speaking of 0-17 rosters, man, Kansas City and Chicago. Okay. Obviously, the game is secondary to what the actual spectacle of what happened for that whole thing is.
But it does need to be addressed. At the Chicago Bears football team. Do they know that they're a football team? Have they been told?
Listen, you're right. Before we jump into the nonsense, I do want to say regarding the Bears, they have obviously so much fundamentally wrong, but at the same time, I felt so bad for their fans this past week because one, it's a very big fan base. I mean, Chicago's a huge amount of people with ties. I mean, they're a loud one too, and they should be. That being said, like, they're so bad after all when you make all the changes that they at least seemingly made in-house with culture and things and restructured, and you look worse than a team that had the number 1 overall pick, and you look worse. I felt bad for their fans, and obviously with the whole controversy of things that happened in that organization this past week, following a bad week of practice, I knew looking at that scoreline, I'm like, the Chiefs could win by 40 and play half their starters. I literally said that to someone. And everyone knew that going into the game. On the Bears, I feel so bad because there's like no hope in sight. Like, I have no idea how you fix this other than fire everyone, take everyone off the roster, and completely start over. And you can't do that in the NFL. Like, they have I can't even tell them to tank for Caleb. You think Caleb's going to fix this mess?
Yeah.
Like there is no fixing this for potentially years, and there's no end in sight to being bad. That's what's crazy.
I mean, we had this conversation with Josh when he was on. I mean, Justin Fields looked good last year, and he has regressed.
Yeah,
and the entire the offense, the defense, everyone looks worse, and it's the same staff. So it's just I don't know like where you go because like Cleveland's done it as well. It's just like you can't just fire everybody and hire new people because like. You've done that the last 6 years.
Yeah.
Like, what would make you think it's going to work this time?
I mean, if you just hired Eberflus, it's like the what was his name who went 0-16 with the Browns? Completely
Hugh Jackson.
Thank you. It was completely missing my out of context. Even they gave him a second year. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
they had to. I don't think it was a full second year. But
so he went 1-15 and then 0-16.
That's what it was.
And then he started the next year. And
they fired him.
And they fired him.
Yeah. I mean, and so I don't think that the goal. First of all, I don't think the Bears are going to go 0-17 because I can't go into any situation thinking that's going to happen. But if there's a team in the NFL right now that I'm going to throw the bullseye at and say, hey, it's probably them who have the best chance, the Bears right now. It's also week 3. And you got to give the coaching staff, or at least, what is semblance of it is left, time to figure out what it is they even have. So
I just don't know because they
don't have a single strength.
They don't have a single strength. They seemingly drafted okay. I mean, they had the most cap space this offseason, and they spent a decent amount of it on getting other players. I mean, they got, DJ Moore for Justin. It's just nothing works. And I think Yeah, I think it's just very very unfortunate. Definitely. I mean, I can relate. I mean,
Yep.
I've been there. It's just thankfully we were able to sort of get out of the cycle of terrible, and now we're just in sort of the middle ground of
Now you're hovering 500, which is way better than what the Bears are now. And I can say, and this is going to make me sound like arrogant, but I don't know what it's like to root for an NFL team like this. However, I do know what it's like to root for a baseball team that's been in this situation where it's like, oh, we're bad, and no one in the organization has any idea how to fix it, like, or isn't trying to. Now it's a different sport, different situation, but yeah, I mean, it sucks to see.
Yeah,
I think as a Bulls fan, it sucks to see so many Chicago fans unhappy. I don't like it.
Yeah, I think it just kind of it's just one of those things where it's just like I mean, this just has to fall at the feet of Virginia McCaskey. I mean, I don't know what else you do. I mean, it's the same thing with the Lions with Darth Martha. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, you just have, really mediocre ownership.
And I will also add this, and I don't want to go too far into this, but I'll say that, like, that's why at times when you go like 0-12 in a college football season, it's almost easier to stomach just because it is college football and there's so many other factors of it that go into it. And at the end of the day, there really aren't professional athletes. It's like nothing but despair when you're like NFL teams bad as a fan, because they're paid professionals, and they are, make millions of dollars, and it's just like there's so many other factors also that play into it. That's why sports is the ultimate reality TV. But it's like, man, it's like, that's at least my experience. Like, I get when my professional teams are not good, I have to disconnect and push myself away from it because it'll make me angrier. You know what I mean?
Well, so I mean, it's a great segue because I mean, for example, you look at Colorado. Colorado was the worst team in college last year.
Yeah,
they get Deion, they bring in half a new roster in the portal, and we'll talk about the game, but like they're at least relevant and decent.
Exactly.
Like so you can especially with the portal stuff, like with Colorado, it's just like you can fix a college team pretty easily and pretty quickly. Right. Like with the NFL, especially if you have ownership and front office people who don't know what they're doing.
I will say to kind of transition to a lighter topic. It was one thing when I saw that they were playing the Chiefs, the Chicago Bears. When I saw who was actually at the game, I thought, oh my, the Chiefs might win by 70.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about this now before we get into college?
So, okay. So I'll just preface. So after this, I'm going to a bar trivia with some of our friends from college. And last week we were talking about this rumored relationship. Yeah. And I said, look, I will believe it when she's up in a box with Mama Kelsey at a Chiefs game. And I kid you not, I turn on the game on Sunday and I'm like, whoa. And so I have to text in the group chat, like,
oh my God,
I guess I have to believe this now. She is in the box.
That's
with like, Travis Kelce's mom.
It was almost like, I'll tell you what, if the NFL script writers exist, that was the twist of the year so far, because I was like, oh wow, it like took it to so many levels. It took it to, oh wow, Adam Schefter's saying Taylor Swift's in the building. Oh wow, here's Travis Kelce. Oh wow, she's in the box next to Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce's mom. It was like an escalation of, oh wow, the amount of TikToks and videos I'm sure you've seen and I've seen of just the various living rooms across the United States just exploding when they saw that whole sequence. I'm like, these people have never seen football in their lives. And there's too much to unpack to say it all here on this show.
The one thing I haven't seen anybody meme using that video of the British soccer like restaurant where everybody goes nuts. Like, I haven't seen anybody do that. And that actually would have been a really funny meme.
It's a really good idea. That'll happen. I bet you before the end of the week that'll happen. Listen, unpacking it in himself, I am going to get into the little bit of the relationship itself. But when something like that happens, obviously it just elevates a team's play. It's one thing when a celebrity's like we've seen celebrity, relationships, all that stuff. I mean, there are several that exist in the NFL right now, and there's never not any that exist across professional sports, entertainment and sports, professional sports. They're constantly butting shoulders, and that's totally believable. But I think it just hit because you have literally the best and probably most known NFL team in the world out of the last like 4 years, 5 years, involving probably two of the best players in the league, top 5 players on that, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. And then arguably the most famous person on earth right now is in the building. That caused, I don't know about you, man, but that caused both a social media and media tsunami that I never saw. And I don't know if we've seen in a while before over the last and also here's the other thing. It's one of those topics where every single person, love it, hate it, however you feel about the two individuals involved, many individuals involved, the Chiefs themselves, everyone has an opinion on it. And that's why I think that happened. Everyone has an opinion. Even if they say they don't, they're lying. Everyone has an opinion.
Yeah. No.
Every single person on earth has one. Go ahead.
That is very true. No, I absolutely. I mean, I don't know. I thought it was very funny though, because
it was funny. It was really funny. You predicted the future, bro. You need to absolutely embrace that.
I wasn't even more predicting. It was just like I was so like reluctant to even believe this would ever happen.
You predicted, you said, okay, what's the most cartoonish way that this could be revealed to the entire world? And that's literally what happened. Like truly,
now,
it was a scripted moment.
Now I'm going to shift the goalpost and move the Overton window of this relationship and say, look, I will believe it when she's at MetLife on Sunday again, watching him play again. Right. Like that's my shifting of the goalpost. No. But I think what kind of is getting lost in this though is that people like are kind of, they're not really addressing the fact that he didn't actually kind of play that well. Like, I mean, at least by his own standards, like he's obviously been injured and he missed the first game and he only had 30 yards last week and he had 69 yards this week.
He had to, what's funny is he looked like he was playing reserved. He looked like he was celebrating reserved. And not to mention Patrick Mahomes had to call an audible to even get him a touchdown. He threw it over 3 guys and he threw it like into double coverage to get him a touchdown. And Travis Kelce's just huge. So it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And of course, they kind of knew they had a smaller amount of time too, because like it was in the third quarter. It was in the third quarter and they knew they were all getting benched because of the blowout. And they were like, we just got to get him before.
All right, look, we cannot like the Chiefs players themselves are like, look, we cannot be the ones who didn't get Travis Kelce a touchdown when Taylor Swift was in the building. And that's like kind of was a thing. But the other thing was Taylor Swift's reaction to that. I've heard every opinion on earth about it.
Yeah.
Two reactions I had. One, okay, well, that's a meme forever. And two, I don't think she's watched a lot of football in her life. Those were my two reactions.
I actually wholly disagree with that because there's a very big debate because it's widely known that she's an Eagles fan already. And people from Philly are obviously super mad about it because they feel like cheated on. And I'm like, look, if they didn't just play in the Super Bowl, nobody would care.
Yeah.
Like they're literally in opposite conferences. They barely ever play. Yeah. And it's only a thing because they just met in the Super Bowl. Like if they didn't just meet in the Super Bowl, they'd be like, oh, that's cool because his brother plays for the Eagles. Like people wouldn't even care.
I don't know, man. I think you're right. That's true. People forget that Taylor Swift was born in Pennsylvania too.
She's from Philly. And her dad is a big Eagles guy. And so I don't know, obviously she hasn't like been to games since she's been famous, but I do think she's aware of the sport and knows how football works.
That's probably true. I'll say this. My favorite of the two Kelces is by a lot Jason Kelce. Shout out him. That's all I've got to say about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think also, I mean, people do forget that she started as a country artist, and so for like 5 years she had to pretend how to be,
and she was half raised in Nashville, but off of that whole thing.
So she definitely had to know football to get in with that.
Can I please get into the thing that I really wanted to say today on our show?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I even like had to write my talking points down here. As I said to you, you talk about a man who's decided Travis, who's decided I want all of the smoke and I want all of it and actually got it. I'll tell you what, I just want the next Taylor Swift album to be called Travesty, and I want it to be about how potentially this doesn't work out, and I want it to be all about how just bashing the Kansas City Chiefs and Travis Kelce, because that's what's probably going to happen. I'm not saying I'm really, really rooting for that. It would be nice if this all works out. I'm just saying that there's a higher percentage chance that what I said happens, or something like that. That's all.
Yeah,
I'm not a Chiefs fan. I'd be like, hey man, good luck for you. I'm not a Chiefs fan. That's all.
I saw some TikTok from somebody that was like making up potential lyrics in a song about Travis Kelce.
Oh my.
And I don't remember. I wish I remembered the line, but like the line was something about it was something about I thought that when you said you loved me, you did, but in reality, the barbecue was mid.
You could have told me that's already a Taylor Swift line that exists.
Yeah,
I'd be
yeah.
I should probably go. Let me just
Kansas City barbecue. Yeah,
I'm not a hater of Taylor Swift or Travis Kelce. I'm also not like a huge fan of either one of them. I think it's funny what's going on, and I really this is that. I mean, I had someone say this to me. She's such a typecast artist that I am just the fact that this became a meme instantly when they were like maybe a thing, and then that happens on Sunday. I'm like, oh man. I mean, this whole thing removed Deion from the headlines of sports.
Yeah,
that should be your transition, because he did a good job removing himself from it.
Yeah, he needs to send a thank you note to Taylor for getting the heat off of him.
But anyway, I digress. You can continue with anything you have to say. Hey, Chiefs played great as expected. We'll see what happens with that whole thing.
Yeah, I think
what a time to be alive, y'all. What a time to be alive.
Look, I'll just say that my favorite thing about it was just all of the jokes. I mean, there were jokes about the security keeping Jackson away from the box, trying to film TikToks with Taylor. There were jokes about like
being removed in the popcorn machine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and just in my head, I'm trying to picture her like ever having a conversation with Brittany Mahomes.
Yeah.
That would be the weirdest conversation of all time.
Well, one of them, like the whole thing of like, is one of them very upset that all the attention's off of the other one? I'm sorry. But anyway, I mean, but anyway, this is like, what's funny is this whole thing was so unbelievable that every joke is hilarious because it could be true. It's one of those things, and you can't just help but laugh and not like, enjoy this whole entertaining circus. But nonetheless, hey,
look, real or not, PR relationship or not, I don't care. It's funny, it's entertaining. It's
good for them.
It's cool.
Good for them. It's funny. It's pretty cool. That said, you want to get into some college football?
Yeah, I think it's a good transition.
We can talk about that game, because I'll tell you what, Oregon took them to school. Colorado, that is. There were sound bites out of that game as well. College football was not to be outdone by the NFL this week either. I mean, you talk about the headlines that came out of that, and the coaches jawing at each other, and we will get to that other one. But man, Oregon, the whole we play for wins, they play for clicks thing that the head coach said to them.
Along with the social media team that didn't really pull any punches yesterday.
I mean, they put that whole cinematic thing out, basically.
Yeah, and they
kind of exposing them a little bit. Like, hey, do you see how these guys are acting pregame? Some of that is kind of like, like all teams do that. But some of that was like, yeah, for you to guys be acting that way and then get absolutely dogged. Like, welcome to reality moment.
It's. I mean, it's. I get it, but like we talked about it last week, like they just almost lost at home in front of everybody to Colorado State. Like they barely won, and they realistically should have lost that game. And so it's like for them to have gotten, scared straight and still acting like that is just absurd. Like I get it. Like I get acting that way, game 2 against Nebraska after they had that big win against TCU, like, because everybody thought you were going to be garbage. But like for you to continue to do that
week,
game in and game out after like you were kind of brought back down to earth, like it's just playing with fire because like now you're into actual conference games against really good teams, and it's like I hope they at least sort of stop doing that. Because it's going to get real bad once you get Utah and USC and
I mean, I think one of the things is you can behave that way so long as you are winning, and very few teams across all of sports were kind of the Muhammad Ali's of their day. Probably the most prime example. Well, not pun not intended. The most prime example was probably the U of the '80s. Just simply where we're going to beat you by 80 and we're going to tell you we're going to do it. And we are going to celebrate every single time because we know you can't beat us. I mean, in college football nowadays, there needs to be a sense of pulling that kind of stuff back, at least to some degree, so that you don't get completely clowned in a situation like this. I don't know. Just the whole bulletin board material, it's never been easier than it is now to hear what your opponents are saying about you. And to put something out there that you really don't mean is bad, but the media is going to take it and make it bad.
Look, I want to know where Lou Holtz is right now. What he said about our team. Like, I mean, exactly. I mean, like if
where's
you have,
he at right now?
If you have Ryan Day,
dude,
giving wrestling, like cutting wrestling promos about a 90-year-old man,
he goes out there and
people
Richard
take
Sherman's
that to heart because you need that to get your guys up, which is fine. Like it happens. It's just like we've talked about it so many times. Like you have to actually think about, maybe not giving the opposing team this stuff week in and week out.
I will say that I will give props to Deion Sanders for handling it well. I mean, he kind of like his soundbite where he's like, look, teams are coming at me, not so much my players. I think that's Oregon kind of exposing. It's like, nah, I think their players a little bit too, but at their core, they're still a brand new squad, and they were probably going to be humbled like this. They might get humbled again this next week, hosting USC at home.
Right. I mean, and again, if they were like winning games and doing this, it wouldn't be quite as big of a deal. It's just that like they had just barely won and almost lost at home in front of everybody in prime time. And it's like that should have been the message, like, hey, maybe we're not quite as good as we thought we were. Yeah. Let's, and
it did
put our heads.
I don't think at any point that message was actually given to them, dude. I just don't think that's what that ship's like over there. So maybe it'll be going into USC because it's like, look, we lost by 36 points this past week. Maybe we should like come in a little bit more focused because I know we're at home, but this team is also very capable of clowning us at home. So
let's
transition to.
Look, I mean,
you got to transition.
No one expected them to be like national championship winning team immediately, so it's just like I think they had to bring down their expectations. But there was one more thing. I saw a video which was the funniest video I've ever seen. I would imagine it was an Oregon fan recorded the Colorado equipment staff bringing the throne back to the locker room with it off the field as Oregon's band was playing their alma mater or whatever, and it was just like the funniest thing.
I love that. So getting into Ohio State and Notre Dame, off that transition of just the noise that we heard this past week in college football. I'll be real with you. I didn't get to see the game itself because I was busy handling events, where I'm at. I did see the highlights, though. I knew that was going to be a really tough game for both squads, and it honestly looks like it was an instant classic.
Yeah, it was a pretty defensive battle, and it was, I thought it was a pretty classic sort of just like grinded out type of game where neither team's defenses were really giving you much, and but I mean we did see a decent amount of good stuff from Kyle McCord and Sam Hartman. Notre Dame, definitely looks very good up against the top 5 Ohio State. So yeah, I mean it's just one of those things where
unfortunately for them, they had to play Ohio State, and I we'll see if that ends up costing them a shot at the playoff later. But who knows?
Luckily for Notre Dame, it's seemingly anyway, Ohio State's a pretty good loss to have early in the year, because you can pretty much expect them to most likely run the table. Now, if they do fall to Penn State here in a few weeks, or Michigan, obviously at the end of the year, it hurts you a little bit, especially if that's Ohio State's first loss. But again, those teams are really good too. So the worst thing would be if they were upset by some random Big Ten team, and I don't think that's happening to this year's Ohio State team. What I will say is some people have pegged Ohio State as being like a for sure fire contender this year. They are, but to me, they look like the same team that's gotten manhandled by Michigan these last few years. And it's like, playoff or not, I don't know.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to. They're going to have to beat Michigan to really, I think, sort of end the discussions around that. But yeah, I think it's just the thing about Notre Dame though is just that like without being in a conference, they don't have the opportunity to redeem themselves and to win a conference championship or whatever
title game.
And I mean they play USC. I think that's really, I think their only other huge. Do they play Florida State? I'm not sure, but
they always play a really loaded schedule. Notre Dame does not play Florida State. They play Duke.
I think they play Clemson, or they play Duke. That's right.
They play Clemson. They play USC. They play Duke this year, and this coming week, it's a big deal. They play Pitt and Stanford and Wake Forest. So they really don't have another big.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see how everything else shakes out. But I mean, if they can go and beat Duke, and if they can beat USC, then they'll definitely probably have a case to be in the top 6. And it's just going to kind of come down to, I think, how Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State kind of all play against each other and if there's an open spot. I mean, I think it's going to come down to, okay, do you put Michigan and Ohio State in, or do you put Notre Dame in?
Right.
That's
exactly. So yeah, that said, I don't necessarily disagree with anything Lou Holtz said about Ohio State. That's just my opinion. I understand why Ryan Day was mad though. And when it kind of on to the point you kind of made earlier, we were kind of talking about the previous game. It's kind of like, it's one thing whenever the students get like really fired up, they should. I mean, they're college football players and all that stuff. It's major D1 college football. When the coach gets mad enough to like make a statement and go off like Ryan Day did, something really triggered him. And winning and silencing those critics really put that, really caused them to want to say that. So
I want to make sure I get this right. So I think that like the reason it became so personal for Ryan Day is that I think that it just, I mean, I think that he definitely probably grew up watching Lou Holtz and his Notre Dame teams, and I think as a coach, he probably definitely like respected him and learned a lot from his coaching philosophies and things like that. And so I think it was probably just like a deeply emotional like betrayal for him to just go on national TV and like basically say that he's bad at his job.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that it's definitely sort of, because it made it personal. Like if he got up there and he was like, "Look, Ohio State, they're not big. They struggle." Like if he had a very technical answer about it, I don't think he would have been quite so mad. But he did kind of call out Ryan Day personally and make it sound like it was his fault that they were soft.
I also think that Ryan Day has a bit of a chip on his shoulder because of the coach that he replaced at Ohio State, coming from Urban Meyer to him. There's been a little bit of, at least not an issue, there's been a little bit of an inferiority complex between Urban to Ryan Day among Ohio State fans, and wondering whether or not he deserves to be in the conversation of all-time greats. And one of the legit all-time greats says that about you. I think you're right, Casen.
Right. No, yeah. I mean, I think that it definitely it's the complaint. I mean, I've been saying it for 2 years. Like it's the complaint that everybody in Columbus is saying about him, and he knows that.
and he can handle it from people here. It's just, I think when somebody who, probably in his mind is a coaching idol, or,
He's
somebody
one of the goats.
I
mean, he is.
Yeah. I somebody that he looked up to, when he sort of calls him out and says, look, you're not good at your job for the reason that everybody's been saying. And I do think he's definitely been trying to fix the problem. And I think that he just kind of cracked. And, I think that
what I would say to Ryan Day is Lou Holtz is 86 years old. I mean, that's the one thing I will say. It's like, he has a very big voice though. And I think Lou Holtz's people need to remember that. That said, he was doing a tongue-in-cheek thing on the Pat McAfee show. And I was like, I don't know, man. I feel like one quick statement, taking a shot at Lou Holtz, was enough. But when he went on that rant, I was like, okay, now you kind of showed that whole thing really irked you. Like, it lives rent-free in your head. Like, the more you react, the worse it looks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of what you do. I mean,
my take, just one man's opinion.
No, I definitely agree. And I mean, it's the type of stuff that you kind of have to do when you're competing at this level. I mean, we've talked about, Saban does the same stuff where one person from the Montgomery Gazette says something about Nick Saban and how the wide receivers aren't fast enough, and he goes on a 10-minute rant every week. It's just it's something that the great coaches of great programs, they have to fixate on something to get themselves up for the game, and to get their players up for the game. To, I guess, keep the motivation every game.
Yeah.
So it's just
the last bit before we get into of the weeks that I wanted to talk about was, we did have on that kind of same note, we did have Oregon State and Washington State play each other. And we mentioned it last week, how it's hopefully the championship of the Pac-2, so to speak. But, the Washington State coach, Washington State upset Oregon State 38-35. And he made a point that he was upset that Lee Corso had said he said in his presser, the nobody watches bowl. What Lee Corso actually said during game day was the nobody wants us bowl. And I mean, I get Lee Corso was clearly joking. I think it was a very different conversation and a very different lighthearted thing that he meant, a little different than the whole Lou Holtz talk, right? Another comment by another older guy in the game. I really don't think he meant to take a personal shot at them, but that is kind of the situation you find himself in. I also understand that coach being frustrated at that.
Right.
Because they're really in a tough spot. And I really think that's rough.
I think that they're both already super frustrated about the situation.
Yeah.
Because we saw the interviews with him the day after it happened, and he was super annoyed and angry about the situation.
I think both schools are hurt about it. I really believe that. If you're an alumnus of that school, what does the future look like even next year? You're probably going to have to be an independent for a while. I mean, there's so much uncertainty of what to do. And so while I don't think any ill intent, I will never say anything ill will about Lee Corso. Love that man. He didn't mean anything by that. I understand their frustration fully at Washington State. So
I mean, and it's definitely, I mean, Lee's definitely not the only one to make sort of a tongue-in-cheek joke about the situation. I mean, there's been a lot of people talking about it, and I mean, he's just redirecting his anger mostly, I think, at the other members of the Pac-12 that are sort of leaving them
high and dry
with, who knows how much debt and no money to pay it off. So,
I see.
Yeah, I mean, the only other game I wanted to mention was our weekly Brian Ferentz update. Number 24 Iowa went into Happy Valley and had to face the whiteout game at Penn State.
How many points did they score, Casen?
They scored 0. They lost 31-0 against number 7 Penn State.
Goose egg of the week.
Which if we want to keep track, it brought the points per game average quite down. Of which there's also rumblings that it's not even 24 points per game, that it's 25. So that's also not helpful. So yeah, tough day for Brian Ferentz. He might have to they might have to schedule some FCS teams at the end of the season to get those numbers up.
Jeez. I will say on that other side, Penn State beating them 31-0 at home is significant.
Which they are not like that defense is not bad. I mean they've usually always had a pretty solid defense. So
yeah,
I think that's a testament to Drew Aller and the progress they've made offensively. So definitely the Michigan and Ohio State matchups with Penn State are going to be very entertaining and interesting because that division is pretty wide open and up for grabs between those three. The only other note I wanted to mention was I lost my thought there. Anyway, any other games you want to talk about?
No, those were the ones that were the loudest, I would say. I just think that we're moving into the conference play, like more heavy conference play this like coming week and weeks ahead. And this is kind of like really where really that was more this past week. I guess I will say in terms of like up and coming for this next week, Florida State, it took overtime for them to beat Clemson. Clemson has to travel to Syracuse in the Dome this next week over my right shoulder here. That is going to be fascinating because Clemson tends to struggle up there, and this is a struggling Clemson team. And this is a good Q's team. So I think I think Clemson as of today was like 6-point favorites in that game. Seems on par for me. So we'll see what happens in the Battle of the Orange. But that was probably the only real huge notable game. Alabama beat Ole Miss. That's not really like a huge deal. That was pretty much expected.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't know what you were going to get with Alabama sort of being up and down, but it's just Lane can't beat Saban. It's just that's how it goes.
Yeah. That's tends to be the case. And nothing else in the top 25 was really all that eye-opening. So another glorious week awaits us, and I look forward to it. Is it time for the weeks?
I'll just note that I think the biggest game this week is going to be Notre Dame has to go to Duke. So I mean they have two big games back to back, so that'll be pretty tough for them. So
yeah, all these traditional blue blood basketball schools all really doing well in football this year. Like more than usual, to the eye-opening amount. But alrighty, so let's see here. So why don't you start of the weeks? Because I've kind of alluded to a few.
Yeah,
I don't think there's going to be any surprises.
I will give my coach of the week to Marcus Freeman. I sort of mentioned it earlier, but he. So if you didn't watch it, the end of the Ohio State Notre Dame game, there. After the game ended, somebody looked at the film and posted on Twitter, Notre Dame had 10 players on defense for the last two defensive plays of the game, and the last one being the touchdown that won them the game, that won Ohio State the game. And obviously you are allowed 11 players, so you'd want to have 11 players on the field, especially when the area where they ran in the ball to score the touchdown was where they were missing a defensive end. And when somebody asked Notre Dame coach Marcus Freeman about this after the game, he admitted he knew and he saw that, but he didn't want to do anything about it because he didn't want to, I guess, take the penalty for it.
I think it's like he didn't want to. I think when he saw it, he doesn't necessarily say that he directly knew it was 10 guys. I think there was rumblings on the sideline in two very big plays. I mean, this is the game, literally, that we may not have enough guys out there, but he didn't want to run the risk of them running a 12th man out there. Like, I really legitimately don't know if he knew if it was 10 or 11 guys. That's the only reason in my head that you would say that as a coach. Because in my head, I'm thinking,
yeah.
Because if I know for a fact, I'm counting, I see 10 guys, get out there. Even if the guy's running out there, it's either that or it was too late to do so. But when you don't see it the first time, you definitely fix it the next play, which is why 2 in a row, I think he legitimately didn't know if there were 10 or 11 and didn't want to run the risk of them getting that penalty. So that's what makes sense to me in terms of the explanation.
So, okay. So I think what he was saying was that he didn't want to get a penalty because that would have given them some more yards.
Well, yeah,
it would have like given them another 6 inches.
Right. Like, well, what I'm saying is whether it was going to be a penalty because he knew and didn't want to take the risk of a guy running and they snap the ball, which is an offsides, or he doesn't know how many guys. He didn't want a penalty. It's one or the other. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think he's saying though that he knew there were 10 guys.
Okay, well, in that case, why didn't you run someone out there for the second play?
I don't know.
That's what doesn't compute in my head. I think he had this idea. I just don't think he knew. Like you're either going to get penalized because a guy's running and they snap the ball and that's an offsides, or you genuinely are going to get too many men and you genuinely don't know how many guys are out there. But when that mistake I think made 2 plays in a row, that's just heinous. So
right, I mean, of which though there's literally 3 seconds left on the clock. What does it matter if they get first down?
Right.
Like what is the?
They're going for the touchdown or not? I mean,
like what does it matter if it's half the distance to the goal, which would be 6 inches, and a first down when there's 3 seconds left in the game?
Can you imagine if they had stopped him with 10 guys? Oh my goodness. Lou Holtz would have taken to the internet again. Anyway, that's a coach of the week. Yeah, yours are always backhanded. I feel like I'll start positively because it's the rest of my other weeks are kind of like stuff we've already talked about. I do have an absolute dog of the week, and it's not as impressive as like the last couple weeks, but it does involve another special teams player. And I don't know the full story because a whole lot hasn't been reported on it. But do you know who Jonathan Wheats is, Casen? Do you hear this story?
I do not.
So Jonathan Wheats is a former backup kicker for Clemson who rejoined the team this past week. Despite the fact that he was working and preparing for a real-life job, Dabo called him up and said, hey, we're having some kicking issues. You want to come back and kick the rest of the year? And, yeah, he came in for that Florida State game. And so it is looking decent so far. But more just the absolute dog moment of, hey, I want to play ball so much. I want to go back and join my guys. I got some eligibility left, you know?
Yeah. I don't think he actually did that well, but at least
I don't think he did that well either. Actually, I take it back.
I think he missed a game-winning field goal at the end of regulation.
However, he was a walk-on from 2019 to 22, which makes the story better.
Yeah, he definitely. It's definitely like wild that he came back. Because I think he was working like on Wall Street.
He was working on and also his career was behind P.T. Potter of the Tigers, who is the all-time leader in field goals. So he was never going to see the field anyway. But it's like this is his one chance to be the starting kicker for even a few games for Clemson, because this may not even work out. But just the idea that he could do that was enough for him to go back to Clemson for just a few weeks. Even
it's also just absurd that a program like Clemson has this bad of a kicker issue. Like, you can't find somebody.
Well, hey, man, they don't use the transfer portal. So what are they going to do?
Right. That's true. What
are they going to do? You can just get any player in the transfer portal, but they don't believe in it. So what are you going to do? Anyway.
That's true.
So that's my absolute dog of the week. You have another of the week?
Yeah. This is a fun one. I have a why is that illegal of the week. I don't know if you saw it, but there's a video going on Twitter. James Madison University's football coach, Curt Cignetti, got like yelled at by the refs because the refs made a bad call, and Curt Cignetti pulled out his cell phone to show them the replay and what they got wrong. And the refs were like shoving the phone out of it. He was like, "You can't do that."
Wow.
Like, and the announcers were like talking about like, yeah, like you can't show replay to the refs. And like,
that's crazy.
If the refs got it wrong and you show them instant replay of what they got wrong, they're like, "Oh, get out of here. We can't do that."
I mean, I've helped with that, with the instant replay stuff, and I will say that it's interesting that it is interesting, but like it's all about rule book. You know what I mean? Because the rule book is the thing that's like agreed upon on the NCAA level among all the schools. And if that is in the rule book of like the other, because here's the thing, the idea is that why is that illegal? I can tell you a semblance of why, because there's this idea of you could have on your phone manipulated imagery. And it's like, we need a completely objective outside voice to objectively look at what happened on the field and make the call. So I kind of get that, but it's just kind of wild that I
absolutely.
But
awesome. like I don't know if you remember, but like last season there was a hilarious moment in the NBA when Patrick Beverly took a photographer's camera and showed the
Pat Bev did do that, didn't he? Yeah, that did happen.
And it felt like the same thing.
And it does feel like the same thing. And it wasn't right then either. So it wasn't right
but
to do that.
It just made me think though, because if you go back to the Browns game, there was a horrendous call by the refs where they blew Amari Cooper out of bounds, but he was in bounds by like a foot. And it was like, well, we can't review it. So just, I guess, first down where we blew the whistle. And it's like, and the ref was standing right in front of him.
That's crazy.
And it was like, come on. But
so
anyway, so that was just a funny thought.
There's maybe a way I can make this funny. This is probably going to turn out stupid in my head, but I've been thinking about this just since we've been talking through this cast. I was between two different things for upset of the week, but I'm going a left fielder here. Okay. My honorary mentions for upset of the week were Washington State over Oregon State because of all we've been talking about them. And my other real football one is the Cardinals over the Dallas Cowboys. But to be honest, with the last few days, Travis Kelce over the odds. That's my upset of the week. Maybe that's not actually an upset. Maybe that's in no way an upset. It's probably a stupid thing I just said. But let's be real. I didn't think this was going to happen. And that makes it an upset to me. So
you're not alone. I mean, you're definitely not alone. I mean,
Travis Kelce over the odds is my upset.
There are many reasons to think as to why that would have never worked. And so, yes.
For us to even get this far. So, hey, hats off. That's my upset of the week this week.
I mean, like relationship or not, he still got her to go to a football game in Missouri.
He's in the box. He's in the box next to his mom. I mean, even if it's just like, hey, he's my guest of the week. It's like, that's insane. Most famous person in the world right now. Anyway, I'm just freaking out again. But
it's still a win. That's still a win. That's an upset. Definitely,
that's an upset, man. Of the
totally
week.
Agree.
So,
totally
Casen,
agree.
You got another of the week?
Yeah, I have an of the year already. Nice. And I think my finesse of the year, we talked about it when it happened, goes to New York Giants quarterback Daniel Jones.
Danny Dimes.
Danny Dimes got a massive fat contract. And oh boy, does that look like a terrible idea.
Yep. So
I said it at the time.
Hey, lowest common denominator, man. The second you get a bag, they play bad. It's just how it happens.
Yeah. So congrats on the $160 million. And we'll see how that goes for them moving forward.
I will say the last one I have here is kind of on a serious note. Performance of the year. No one's topping that Dolphins performance. Maybe the Dolphins. They're the one. First, we didn't actually even necessarily go through the stats, but you probably already saw them. But first time anyone's hung 70 points in the NFL since 1966. I think the most ever is 73. So
it's 72, and the Dolphins were in field goal range to end the game, and they could have kicked a field goal just to get the record, and they didn't. And he chose not to do that. So he was. I mean, as much as you wanted to potentially, as much as some old heads might want to dog him for the 70 burger, he still didn't go for the record when he very easily could have.
See, that's my thing of I'm being that coach of look, I've already hung 70 on this team. What's 3 more for the record? But again, coaching philosophies, because when are you scoring 70 again in the NFL? Probably never. Statistics say never again. So I don't know.
Maybe I don't know if you heard it. They talked about it a little bit on PMT too. There's a theory out there that he did this on purpose.
Yeah,
because he has a grudge against the Broncos front office.
He very well could. That actually made sense to me. He very well could,
because
they passed on him a lot. He was a ball boy
because
for them, and
he was a ball boy, and they refused to give him an interview for the head coaching position. And also, he was involved with Kyle Shanahan, and there was a massive divide between the Broncos former CEO Joe Ellis and Mike Shanahan, and Mike Shanahan didn't want Kyle, he didn't want Mike. So it seems like he was on the other side of a friendship breakup between Joe Ellis and Mike Shanahan.
Yeah.
And which is very funny because I don't even know, like, Joe Ellis hasn't worked for the Broncos in years, and like the Waltons bought them. It's a completely different theme, but like he just hates the franchise. Yeah, exactly.
I will say my other of the week is an upcoming must-watch game of the week because of its implications. Broncos Bears. Whoever loses that, I had to make sure I mentioned that because I teased it earlier. That's gonna be something. It's a game I probably will not watch, but whoever loses that, whoa, that's gonna be a rough week to follow.
That's going to be the Caleb Williams Bowl, potentially
for Broncos. Maybe, I don't know about Chicago. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know.
Way more necessary, but that's it for my of the weeks, man. My performance of potentially the year.
Yeah, I mean, the only one I had was definitely winner of the week, Travis Kelce, and I think that goes without being said. So
that was so casual. That was great. Well, I really hope the listeners enjoyed that as much, talking about all that as much as I knew we were going to. Thank God we were able to do a show this week. That it all worked out. Let us know your thoughts about that. I will mention, as we're transitioning out of here, Casen, we might have an end to the strike, at least one of them.
And I think so it seems like the AMPTP has met, from what everything I've seen, most of the demands from the WGA. We have a tentative agreement. It's going to take probably a couple weeks for the voting to occur, and from what I've seen, the WGA is still technically going to be on strike until SAG gets their agreement. So I think that's going to follow pretty shortly. But yeah, I mean, from the different representatives I've seen talk about it, they seem happy about it. I mean, they got what they wanted, it seems like. So great stuff. And for something that seemed, when we talked about it a couple weeks ago, it seemed like there was no end in sight, but thankfully we're here. I think we said it before, like, we just hope that this can end before the holidays, and it seems to be heading that way. So thankfully we're near the finish line on this thing, and they got what they wanted, which is the important thing.
Shout out to all writers. Shout out to the people who really fought. And to be honest with you, shout out to the power that the Writers Guild clearly knew that they had from the very beginning. Power, them and the SAG after, because, like, honestly, like, you can only go so far to where it's like, we are going to lose money if we don't put material out, and it takes a while to make good content. So I'm happy. I'm really happy that it looks like we're trending in a right direction, and it just goes to show that we could be entering kind of this new era where people are going to get, hopefully, what they deserve and should have if you fight for it. So love seeing things like that. So that's it, man. That's it. It's in the can. Another great episode of Junction 119 in the books. This was one I was really looking forward to. I was like, man.
Oh yeah, me too.
I'm like, I gotta talk to my boy about this stuff and put it out there for people to hear. Let us know your thoughts about this stuff. We know you will. We really thank you so much for listening, and we appreciate you every week. And we got other things cooking for the upcoming weeks of stuff to happen, and we're right around the corner from the best sports month there is, October. So
absolutely.
So and trust me, we're privy to that as well. So until then, man, in all, Casen, this is Kellan.
This is Casen.
And we will see you at the next stop.